Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Friday, October 25th. If you are just tuning in, we just finished going over the Thursday night action in college football with ODU getting a massive win and Pitt absolutely destroying Syracuse with 3 pick sixes in the first half. A massive game for the Panthers to show they really are deserving of being in the top 20 right now. In this segment, we start off our game picks. We start off in the ranks of college football. We'll get to the NFL in our next segment. But before we do that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to GSMCPodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Friday, October 25th. But like I was saying, in this segment, we turn our attention to game picks. Starting off in college football, really a big week 9. Lots of big games taking place this week. Not as massive as a Georgia-Texas last week, but we have a litany of ranked matchups. Should be a lot of fun. We're going to start off with all 3 of the Friday games. Should be good tonight. Rutgers taking on USC. Rutgers coming off of an embarrassing loss against Wisconsin last week. They got absolutely blown out. That's 2 straight losses for the Scarlet Knights, who started off as a team that might have been near the top 25 just 2 weeks ago. Now they've all but been eliminated. This is a game that is must win for both of these teams. USC falling out of the top 25 a couple weeks ago have suffered a couple brutal losses in a row. Penn State, they nearly beat in overtime. They almost beat Michigan. They're just not quite there. A lot of one-score games for this team. USC favored by 14 in this one. As bad as both of these teams have been playing. And it really is a shame because both of these teams, I think, are very similar. This is in California, and I think that plays a huge role. Having to travel cross-country is something that we often don't think about, especially for college kids and football players that don't have to do that often. I'm taking USC to win this one. 14 is a lot of points, though. I think the way that these two teams played, it's going to be a lot more of a slugfest. USC wins 27-20. The second of 3 Friday games tonight as the Louisville Cardinals, favored by 7.5 points, travel up to Boston to take on Boston College. Boston College, a team that started off hot, obviously winning a game against then top 10 ranked Florida State. We now see that win has not aged very well, and neither has this Boston College team. They've had a couple of moments. They keep it close against some solid opponents, but they have been unable to take advantage of a lot of them. Louisville has lost now 3 straight games, 1 to Notre Dame, 1 to SMU, obviously the 1 to Miami. All of them have been shootouts, and that's the way that this game is going to go. Louisville's offense is as potent as anybody else's in the entire country. You want to talk about one of the more firepower games that we've seen all year, you go watch that Miami-Louisville game that took place last week. Fireworks, like we were talking about when we were doing these predictions last week. Louisville favored by 7.5 in this one. Like I said, that offense is really good. I don't think Boston College quite has the same kind of track record as these teams that have beaten Louisville. All the teams that Louisville has lost to are now ranked in the top 25. SMU, the lowest ranked one, they get a massive game this week that we'll get to later. They're number 22. Notre Dame all the way up at number 12. And of course, Miami ranked in the top 6 in the country. These are all really quality losses that they have stayed competitive in. Louisville should blow Boston College out of the water, but Boston College has the ability to hang around, especially with the way that the Louisville defense has been playing recently, have not really been able to stop much of anything. I think Louisville wins, though, 37-28. And then the final Friday game. I think, in all honesty, this is one of the biggest games of the entire season, not just of the week, as number 17 Boise State hosts UNLV. In all reality, this is most likely a battle to see who gets that spot, that group of 5 spot, in the college football playoffs. These two teams have been at the top of my group of five, top five, for quite some time now. Boise State coming off of a bye, UNLV with a big win these last couple of weeks. They always play these games on Thursday and Friday, so they have a big audience a lot of times. This game, the biggest one that either of these teams have played. I think Boise State, who's favored by 3.5 on this one, is going to be able to just squeeze by. This should be a lot of fun. This is much-watch television tonight. Boise State, again, favored by 3.5. I think they squeak by on this one, 31-27. Heading on to Saturday's slate. Number 4, Ohio State, off of a bye, losing to Oregon their last time out in a tight game, losing only by 1, favored by 25, taking on Nebraska at home. Nebraska coming off of a brutal loss against Indiana. Indiana just beating them by 40 points in this one. It was never really close. That offense has its struggles, and if they can't put up points against an Indiana team that, while it's been really, really good, is nothing compared to Ohio State defensively, they aren't going to be able to put too many points up against Ohio State. I think this game goes very similar to the way it went last week. I think Ohio State wins 44-14. Then we get our first ranked matchup of the week as number 12 Notre Dame takes on number 24 Navy. Notre Dame favored by 12.5 in this one. Again, crazy that all of these service academies are ranked, but this is a big test for Notre Dame. Notre Dame obviously is one that has been known to get upset by Group of 5 schools. It's already happened once this season when they lost to NIU, and that is something that should be held against them. But Notre Dame has played their best football of the season out of that loss. They haven't really played a bad game since, but if anyone is going to give them a fight out of anyone that they've played so far, it's going to be Navy. We saw them beat up on Louisville. Louisville doesn't really have a defense, but Navy has been dominating everybody that they see. This is the biggest test of the season for them. This is going to really show if these service academies are just beating up on lesser opponents or if they really truly deserve to hang with the big boys this season. I think Notre Dame takes this one. The way that their offense has been rolling, I just don't see Navy having the ability to keep up with them or really slow them down all too much offensively. I think 12.5 points is a lot, though, so I think they're going to keep that close. 33-22. Notre Dame wins this game. Then we get an Indiana team that I was just talking about, ranked in the top 15 for maybe the first time ever. They have the option. This is their best season since the 1970s for Indiana here. They have the ability to go 11-1 on the season if they can get past Washington. Their quarterback Curtis Rourke is hurt. That definitely hurts a lot in this one. But Indiana is one of 2 teams all season that is yet to trail at all. Curt Cignetti, a very good head coach, wins everywhere he goes, but he is prone to losing one big game that they're expected to win a year. This kind of feels like that trap game, if only because Ohio State is up next. Game day is coming to town, and they don't have their quarterback. I don't know if that's going to happen because this is a Washington team that has very clear weaknesses. They were beaten by a bunch of teams that I think Indiana would blow out of the water, so I don't think this is the one they lose, but it has upset written all over it. I'm a little cautious about this one. This is a little bit on upset alert, but I'm picking Indiana to win anyway. They win 34-18. Oklahoma travels to number 18 Ole Miss, and this is an elimination game for Ole Miss. For all intents and purposes, I think Oklahoma has already been eliminated this season. Ole Miss is hanging on by a thread. The way that the SEC is going, with a battle between the only 2 undefeated teams in the SEC in LSU and Texas A&M happening this week as well. We'll talk about that later. This is a huge game for Ole Miss. Obviously, this is a game that they need to win if they want to stay alive. Oklahoma's not going to make that easy. I think Oklahoma's defense is still very good. They need to figure out their offense. They're going back to Jackson Arnold this week. I don't think it's going to be quite enough. I think Ole Miss takes this one in a tight one. Ole Miss favored by 20. I think that's way too many points. Ole Miss is a team that can get pushed around, and Oklahoma has the physicality to do that, I don't think they're going to be able to win. No, Ole Miss wins 31-20. Coming back to the ACC for a big matchup of teams that are just outside of that contending for the ACC bubble, as Georgia Tech travels to Virginia Tech to take on the Hokies. The Hokies have been really good since the conference schedule started, almost taking down Miami, beating everybody else in the conference, currently sitting tied for second in that conference right now. They have a weird path in. They can still find a way in. They got Clemson coming up on the schedule. If they're able to win out, it's conceivable that they find a way to get back to the top of the ACC. The ACC top is a jumble right now. I think Virginia Tech is just playing better football right now than Georgia Tech, but still, Georgia Tech has kept every game they've played close. The ability to run the ball with their quarterback and their running back has been nearly unmatched all season. I think Virginia Tech is able to hold off, but it's going to be closer than that 10.5 point spread. Georgia Tech loses 30-24. Heading to Big Ten country up next, another ranked matchup as number 20 Illinois, a team that is continuing to show that they deserve real consideration in the Big Ten, takes on the number 1 team in the nation, the Oregon Ducks. Oregon favored by 22.5, and they have really hit their stride in recent weeks. Oregon, obviously coming off of 2 weeks ago, coming off of one of the biggest wins in the country all season long, taking down Ohio State by just a point. They continued rolling, winning big last week against Purdue. Not the biggest opponent, but still, they didn't have that classic fall-off game that a lot of teams have, shown these last couple of weeks. Alabama losing to Vandy, stuff like that. Oregon favored by 22.5 in this one. That is a lot of points for an Illinois team that has continued to show that they're better than expected. I don't think they win this one because, like I said, Oregon, one of the deepest teams in all of college football, one of the most complete teams in all of college football, is hitting their stride. But I think 22.5 is really disrespectful, honestly, to Illinois. I think they cover that pretty easily, but I still think Oregon their offense puts up too much points for Illinois to keep up with. They win 40-23. Then a game that I just flat out don't understand. UCF is favored against number 11 BYU. I know BYU is very lucky with turnovers. They kind of had a close one last week, but still, UCF has gotten blown out by a Colorado team that, while Colorado's awesome, BYU is still better than them. BYU, again, winning is a skill. I don't understand in what world UCF is favored, even though they're at home. BYU should win this one pretty handily. I love the way their defense plays. Their offense hasn't really been able to be slowed down by anybody all season long. Kansas State is maybe the best team in the Big 12, and BYU was able to handle them pretty easily. I think BYU goes down to Florida, takes out UCF pretty easily. I don't know why UCF is favored. BYU wins 31-21. Another ranked matchup this week, and this one really is an elimination game. I know I talked about elimination games earlier, but this is an elimination game for both of these teams, as Missouri, the number 21 team in the nation, takes on number 15 Alabama. Alabama coming off their second loss of the season. They just can't win in the state of Tennessee right now. This is a massive game. Alabama's favored by 17.5, and I think that sounds about right. Alabama is a team that just absolutely is better than Missouri. Missouri has played good, but they haven't been able to dominate anyone. The last time we saw them play a matchup similar to this was against Texas A&M, and they got absolutely blown out of the water by Texas A&M, giving up 40 points in that matchup. Alabama is not the Alabama of old. They've been struggling. They haven't been able to play consistently good football, especially on offense. Jalen Milroe has been too turnover happy this season, especially after the big win against Georgia. They need to find a way to calm down. This should be a get-right game for Alabama. 17.5 points is a lot. I think they win. I'm pretty confident they win this game by a lot, but 17 and a half is so many points. I think the final score, Alabama 31, Missouri 14, again, in an elimination game for the playoffs. I don't know how much this does for Alabama, but I don't think Missouri is going to be able to hang with them. Excuse me. Continuing with a in-state Texas matchup as Texas Tech takes on TCU. Texas Tech coming off of a brutal loss to Baylor last week. Texas Tech was getting some buzz as a fringe top 25 team. Looking at some of their resumes, some people were putting them in the top 25. Then they take a brutal loss there to Baylor. People stop talking about them. I don't think this makes them a bad team. They slipped up. They didn't play very good football. I think this is a game where they're going to be like, hey, we're still here. Respect us. I think Texas Tech comes back, wins this game. They're currently favored. They're actually underdogs in this one. TCU favored by 6.5. I think Texas Tech takes this one 31-28. Yet another ranked matchup still in the SEC as number 5 Texas travels to Vanderbilt to take the number 25 Commodores. It's crazy that Vanderbilt is ranked after not the greatest performance against Ball State. I understand ranking them after Alabama, but still, this is now a ranked matchup. Texas obviously coming off of that brutal loss to Georgia where they just looked awful in almost every phase of the game. The defense stepped up, played solid, was able to pick off Carson Beck a couple of times, but still the offense was not able to get anything going against a solid Georgia defense. I don't think Vandy's defense is anywhere near as good as that Georgia defense is going to cause a lot of issues for this team. We take a look at that Vanderbilt offense led by Diego Pavia. It's a good offense. They were able to put up nearly 40 on Alabama, a team that beat Georgia. Georgia beat Texas. You can play that game. I'm pretty sure you get the full circle at this point, especially with the chaos that's been going on this year. But still, this has been a wild year in the SEC, especially. And I can't get out of my head that Vanderbilt has a chance. Texas is favored by 18 points in this one. That is way too many points. I don't know if they're going to lose, but I think this is a game where they get right and they say we cannot lose 2 in a row. Texas wins 38-30. West Virginia, a team that is fine, has taken a couple of tough losses this season, travels to Arizona to take on the Wildcats. Arizona favored by 4.5, and Arizona just has not been a good team this year. Whatever happened to that elite offense at the end of last year has completely disappeared. That defense continues to just be a hole in the wall right there. You can just find your way through. This is a solid West Virginia team. If you give them the ability to come in and win the game, they are going to take that from you as long as they keep it clean, and I don't think Arizona is very good at forcing turnovers in this one. This one should be a tight game, but I think West Virginia wins 26-24. Couple more matchups here. A massive Big Ten game as number 3 Penn State, think they're ranked way too high here, travels to Wisconsin. Camp Randall. Wisconsin's been playing awesome football right now. They come off of a great outing against Rutgers, putting up 42 points. Not quite the same level of matchup, but still, this is a really good Wisconsin team, especially the way they've been playing the last couple of weeks, and a Penn State that feels like they're limping in here after suffering coming off a bye, after suffering a near loss to USC. Wisconsin is a team that I think is going to cause a lot of trouble. I think they upset Penn State in this one. I'm not a big Penn State fan this year. I don't like the product they've been putting out on the field. Excuse me. I think Penn State falls for the first time this season. They lose 33-28. Then a battle for the top of the SEC. I previewed it a little bit earlier as number 8 LSU travels to number 14 Texas A&M. Both of these teams, the only undefeated squads in SEC conference play. They both have losses in week 1, but they're both playing really good football. We saw the offense for Texas A&M start to heat up when they brought in a different quarterback. We saw the LSU defense continue to play really good, and Garrett Nussmeier, when he's on, looks like a true NFL starting quarterback. Not sure if he's really going to be consistent enough this year, but maybe next year, if he stays in college one more year, he can go in the first round. This is going to be a really, really fun game. I think in this one, since it is in Texas A&M, I'm leaning towards the Aggies. It should basically a pick'em. Right now, Texas A&M favored by 1 point, so it is a pick'em, and I think that's exactly what we're going with. I'm picking Texas A&M to win this game 28-27. 3 more games to go as an in-state Kansas rivalry, or not really in-state here, but Kansas travels to number 16 Kansas State to take on the Wildcats over there, potentially the best team in the Big 12. They've been playing better and better every single week. They just came off of a big win last week over Colorado. This is a huge game for them. Over Kansas, over West Virginia. They beat Colorado 2 weeks ago. Kansas State continues to play better and better football. Avery Johnson especially I've been really impressed by. Kansas State takes this one pretty easily, 34-17. Then SMU. They also have a path to the college football playoff. They basically win and you're in kind of situation in the SEC. We talked about that in our last segment. We were talking about Pitt. They're the number 22 in the nation, traveling to Duke, who suffered their first loss of the season just a little bit ago. I think SMU dominates this game. Their offense is one of the best in the country, and their defense has been able to slow down Louisville, who is one of the best offenses in the country. I think SMU wins pretty easily, 31-17. And the final game I wanted to touch on this week, as Cincinnati travels to Colorado in a game that both of these teams are near the top 25. Right now, Colorado, as crazy as it sounds, I don't think is getting enough respect. Their defense is playing really good, especially on the defensive line. Cincinnati has had their one loss in a choke job against a now undefeated Pitt team that's going to be ranked in the top 15 after what they did this week, most likely. That is a good quality loss. Both of these teams are going to get really good bowl games, and it should be a lot of fun in this one. High-scoring, high-flying offenses for both of these. I think Colorado ekes it out 30-27. But let me know what you think. Love to hear your thoughts on any of these games. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we turn our attention to Week 8 in the NFL, go over all of the games. There is not a single bye week this week. We'll go over all 15 games, including the Monday night one. So stick around for that. We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.